Once again, welcome everybody. It's great to be together as we begin this academic year. It's a very exciting time. I know that I'm excited. I hope you're excited as well. When I was a seminarian, way back in the last century, I asked to spend some time with our Holy Cross community in East Africa. And I was allowed to go and spend a year and a half with our community in Kenya. I was truly excited about that opportunity. And during my preparation, I was told that I would probably experience 3 stages during the year and a half I would spend there. The first stage was called the National Geographic stage, when everything would be new and exciting. After a few months, though, it's likely that I would experience some homesickness. And let's call that the homesick stage. And then towards the end of my time there, the last few months, I would likely feel a bit more adjusted, and we'll call that the adjusted stage. Well, I just want to tell you that I did not have any National Geographic stage. I went right to homesickness, right to the homesickness stage, right from the very beginning. It was difficult from the start. Our Holy Cross Formation House was in a very tough neighborhood of Nairobi called Dandora, home of Kenya's largest dump site and about 100,000 people. I had never lived amid such material poverty. The sights, the sounds, and the smells were a little overwhelming. And I was the only American in our formation house. And for the first time, I experienced what it was like to be a minority. Swahili was the everyday language of the area, and I had not yet learned Swahili. I thought to myself, what have I done? How could I have been so naive? How am I going to do this for a year and a half? I don't think I have what it takes. I even used to sit on the roof of our formation house. We had a deck up there, and watch the planes take off from Nairobi Airport, wishing that I was on one. Very sad, isn't it? Very, very sad. Now, deep down inside, I knew I was in the right place. The people of Dandora could not have been more welcoming, and my fellow Holy Cross seminarians and brothers embraced me, and many of them are among my oldest friends today. By the time I left, I couldn't wait to go back, and I have been back many times. I had made so many friends. I found the experience spiritually, socially, and intellectually transformative. Growth, whether spiritual, social, or intellectual, requires that we move beyond the familiar. It requires moving beyond the comfortable. And in this Mass, we are reminded that in one way or another, we are all called to move beyond the comfortable and the familiar in order to learn and in order to serve. And you are no strangers to this. You've already been moving beyond the familiar. You've already been growing. You've already been learning. You've already been serving. But it's important to remember at the beginning of this academic year, we are called to continue to do that. We are called to continue to move beyond the familiar. Today's readings are in many ways all about answering the call and mustering the courage to move beyond the familiar. We hear about the call of Isaiah in the first reading. Isaiah had a vision. In the vision, he finds himself in the presence of the Lord, feeling unworthy to be there. The Lord assures Isaiah, and then he asks, almost rhetorically, "Who shall I send? Who will go for us?" Isaiah answers the call. "Here I am. Send me." Though reluctant at first, Isaiah answers the call to leave the familiar and comfortable life that he knew in order to be a prophet of God. And it's not so comfortable and easy to be a prophet of God. As a prophet of God, Isaiah calls people who had grown too comfortable, too smug, and too indifferent to the suffering of others back to God. He calls them to pursue the truth and to care for the least and the lost. Like many, if not all, the prophets, Isaiah's message afflicted the comfortable and comforted the afflicted. In the end, Isaiah's message is one of hope. He points to the dawning of a new day, the coming of a Messiah. Enter Jesus. In the gospel, we hear Jesus in his own hometown synagogue reading from, you guessed it, the book of the prophet Isaiah. And he proclaims what his mission is all about: bringing glad tidings to the poor, liberating captives, restoring the sight of the blind, and letting the oppressed go free. In short, to proclaim the kingdom of God, to bring creation into greater alignment with God's loving will. It's interesting to note that Jesus had just returned from the desert, where he had spent 40 days fasting, praying, and being tempted. Being fully human as well as fully God, we can assume he was coming to terms with the Father's will for him, his own calling. Jesus leaves the desert to take up his saving ministry. One might say that in Jesus, God leaves the familiar and the comfortable in order to set us free from everything that keeps us from leaving the familiar and the comfortable. Everything that keeps us from realizing our potential for good. The question is, how is God calling you and me to move beyond the familiar this academic year? Being attentive to God's call is not always easy. It requires a contemplative spirit. We know this year is going to be busy. It's already busy. There's nothing wrong with being busy, and there may be something wrong if we're not busy enough. However, the great danger is that we fill every moment with activity so that we become busybodies without much direction and without much depth. So let me urge you all, even as I remind myself, make the time for some personal reflection, prayer, and discernment. Take a break from the bombardment of social media. I'm confident that doing this will not only benefit you and me, but our entire community, and help us to move beyond the familiar in ways that are meaningful and positively impactful. It's important to remember, though, that God not only communicates to us in contemplation, but through other people who sometimes see in us what we find difficult to see in ourselves. Maybe it's your rector. Maybe it's your priest in residence. Maybe it's in residence faculty member. Maybe it's your professor. Maybe it's a campus minister. Maybe it's your advisor or counselor. Maybe it's a wise and trusted colleague. Whoever it is, let us not be afraid to reach out for accompaniment, and let's be willing to accompany each other to answer God's call to move beyond the familiar. Although God is always calling us beyond the familiar and the comfortable, this does not mean it's wrong to be comfortable. We do need to feel comfortable and safe. However, the great danger is that we never take risks. We never try anything new. The danger is we never try to make a difference in the world because we're afraid of making a mistake, or we are afraid that we don't have what it takes, or we underestimate our capacity for good because of some mistake or failure in our own lives. This university is dedicated to pushing the boundaries of knowledge and moving beyond the familiar. It's in our founding DNA. As the constitutions of the Congregation of Holy Cross, the guiding document for the priests and brothers of Holy Cross, notes, the farther we go in giving, the more we stand to receive. But it's important to remember that we need not go very far in order to move beyond the familiar. And it may begin with taking a class that will stretch you, whether in or outside of your major, participating in a research project or a service project, reaching out to collaborate with colleagues on a research project, engaging with people whose backgrounds are different than yours, or having a discussion with someone whose viewpoints are different than yours. It's not easy to move beyond the familiar, even though you and I have done it a few times already in our lives. It's not easy. But it is important to remember that in this Mass we celebrate here at the beginning of this academic year, this Mass is not so much about our belief in God, as important as that is. This Mass is primarily about God's belief in us, God's belief in our capacity for good, God's belief in each and every one of you, a God who knows you better than you know yourselves, a God who created you and sustains you each and every day. As we begin this academic year, inspired by God's belief in us, may we discern God's call and move beyond the familiar in order to grow, in order to serve, and in order to be the Notre Dame the world needs.